Okay, so let's unpack this. Imagine you're, walking through a big city, really bustling.
Right. Towers everywhere, people rushing about, rules for everything.
Exactly. And have you ever just stopped and thought, why? Why this way? Who decided all this?
Yeah, that feeling of questioning the structure around you, it's universal, I think.
Well, if you've ever thought, maybe, just maybe, there are other ways to organize society, ways that really put freedom and equality first,
Yeah.
then this deep dive is definitely for you.
And it's interesting, that impulse to question, to imagine something completely different. It's not new at all. It's actually fueled a lot of thinking over the centuries.
And the specific philosophy we're getting into today, anarchism, is right at the heart of that questioning tradition. Now, anarchism, that word, it definitely conjures up some strong images, doesn't it? Maybe chaos, disorder.
It often does. But the source we're looking at today, it gives a surprisingly clear look at what anarchism actually stands for in its different forms.
Yeah, it's part of a series that's known for, taking these complex ideas and making them accessible. So think of it as our guide.
A guide through the history, the main ideas, the different strands of anarchist thought. It's quite diverse.
Right. And our mission today is pretty much that, to get past the stereotypes, the sort of chaotic image.
And really dig into the more constructive philosophy that the source lays out, what anarchists are actually for, not just what they're against.
Okay, so let's maybe go back in time a bit. The source starts us off in the 19th century, a time of massive change, right? Industrial revolution, societies being totally reshaped.
Absolutely. It was a real crucible, industrial capitalism booming, but also huge inequality. Lots of social unrest.
Sounds like the perfect environment for radical new thinking to emerge.
Exactly. People were really questioning the basics, the state, capitalism, power itself. It was fertile ground.
And the source introduces some really key figures here, like Pierre-Joseph Proudhon and his famous line, "Property is theft." Wow, that's is pretty direct.
It's incredibly provocative, isn't it? And it wasn't just saying, stealing is bad.
Right. What was the deeper point?
His argument was more that the way private property worked allowed owners to profit from other people's labor without actually working themselves. That extraction of value, that was the theft he was talking about.
So not just the physical thing, but the profit derived from owning it and having others work it.
Precisely. He challenged the whole basis of capitalist accumulation. He envisioned something different based more on use and occupancy. You control what you actually use.
That's a fundamental shift in thinking about ownership. And then there's Mikhail Bakunin. He seems more focused on the state itself.
Yes, Bakunin's critique was laser focused on the state. The source mentions he wanted to abolish it entirely.
Abolish the state completely. That sounds, well, pretty extreme even now.
It was and is radical. Bakunin saw the state, any state, as inherently oppressive. It just concentrates power, stifles liberty, prevents real equality. That was his view.
So what was his alternative then? No state, then what?
His vision was society organized differently, like a federation of self-governing groups, communes, workers' associations, power flowing from the bottom up, decentralized.
It really feels like listening in on these intense debates back then, arguing about freedom, authority, whether we even need rulers.
You can almost picture them in a smoky room arguing passionately.
So building on these early thinkers, what are the sort of the bedrock principles of anarchism that the source highlights?
Well, the absolute core, the thing that unites pretty much all anarchist thought, is rejecting coercive hierarchy.
Coercive hierarchy,
Oh.
so not just government.
Not just the state, no. It includes capitalism, any system where some people dominate others, where there's control from the top down. The central pillar is always individual liberty, autonomy.
Individual liberty. But how does that work in practice? If everyone's just free, doesn't that lead back to the chaos idea? The source talks about self-organization.
Right, that's key. Anarchists generally believe people can organize themselves effectively without bosses or rulers telling them what to do, through voluntary association. People freely choosing to work together on things, shared interests, common goals. In workplaces, communities, for support.
And that leads directly to another core idea the source mentions, mutual aid.
Exactly. Mutual aid is huge. It's seen as the practical way things get done. People helping each other out, cooperating because it benefits everyone involved.
So not relying on the state for welfare or the market for everything, but direct cooperation.
Pretty much. It's seen as a natural human tendency, actually. Cooperation for mutual benefit. So those things together, rejecting hierarchy, liberty, self-organization, mutual aid, They paint a picture of faith in people managing themselves.
It's a really consistent focus on decentralization and human agency. But as you said, anarchism isn't just one single thing. The source makes that clear too. It's more like a spectrum.
Definitely a spectrum, a whole family of related ideas, sometimes with different priorities or strategies. The source walks us through a few main schools.
Like mutualism. We mentioned Proudhon. That seems linked to him.
Yes, mutualism often emphasizes individuals or cooperatives owning the means of production, fair exchange based on labor value, maybe things like credit unions instead of big banks.
Okay. And then there's collectivism. How's that different?
Collectivism usually supports social ownership of the means of production, land, factories, that sort of thing. But distribution is often based on how much work someone contributes, to each according to his deeds, basically.
Right. And anarcho-communism. That sounds like it takes the communal part even further.
It does. Anarcho-communists typically advocate abolishing the state and money. Resources are shared based on need. The principle is from each according to ability to each according to need.
No money, just sharing based on need. Wow. And the last one mentioned is anarcho-syndicalism.
Yeah, syndicalism focuses heavily on labor unions or syndicates. The idea is that workers, through their unions, can take over industries, run society, and overthrow both capitalism and the state. Worker control is central.
It really shows, like the source suggests, a lively intellectual world.
Yeah.
Different answers to the same fundamental questions about organizing society without these top-down structures.
Different strategies, different emphasis.
Now let's tackle that big misconception.
Yeah.
The elephant in the room. Anarchy equals chaos. Violence. Disorder. The source addresses this head-on, which is so important.
Absolutely crucial, because that popular image is, frankly, a major misunderstanding. Anarchists aren't against order itself.
They're
against imposed order. Order dictated from above by a central authority backed by force. The anarchist vision is for order to emerge organically.
From where?
From the bottom up. Through voluntary agreements, cooperation within communities, decentralized decisions, the belief is that people, freely associating, can actually create a more stable and just order than one enforced by rulers.
So structure, yes, but built and maintained differently. Through cooperation, not coercion.
Yeah.
That distinction feels critical.
It is. It's the difference between self-governance and being governed.
Okay. Now, theory is one thing. The source also looks at real-world attempts to put these ideas into practice, right? Historical examples.
Yes, and that's vital for seeing both the potential and the difficulties. The source brings up things like the Paris Commune in 1871.
Right. Short-lived, but influential.
Very. Seen as an early example of a city trying to govern itself from the ground up based on working-class organization. Then there's the Spanish Civil War.
Ah, yes, the 1930s. There were significant anarchist areas there, wasn't there?
Huge areas, especially in places like Catalonia and Aragon. Land was collectivized, industries run by workers. It was a massive social experiment, really.
And the source also connects these ideas to more recent movements, like anti-globalization protests.
Yeah, it notes the influence there, the emphasis on decentralized networks, direct action, consensus decision-making. You can see echoes of anarchist principles.
It's interesting to see these threads running through history. But the source also acknowledges these attempts faced huge problems, didn't always last.
Oh, absolutely. They often faced immense external pressure, military intervention, political opposition, and internal challenges too. Organizing on that scale without established structures is incredibly difficult.
But it shows the enduring appeal, doesn't it? The constant striving for that ideal of a fairer, more free society.
Exactly. Even the failures offer lessons. They keep these fundamental questions about how we organize ourselves alive. Can we do it differently? Can we do it better?
And it sounds like the writer of this particular source does a good job making all this history and theory understandable. Clear writing avoids jargon.
Yeah, the source really praises the accessibility. Apparently, the author manages to explain these quite complex ideas in a really straightforward way, which is great because it can be an intimidating topic.
It definitely helps to have a good guide, someone who can light the way without making it feel like homework.
Makes it engaging, sparks curiosity, rather than putting up walls with academic language.
Okay, so wrapping up our own deep dive here.
Well,
It seems clear that anarchism, at least as presented in this source, is way more than just, chaos.
much more. It's a really rich tradition of thought, deep historical roots, clear core principles about liberty and cooperation, and actually a lot of diversity within it.
Different ideas on how a stateless, more equal society could actually work.
Precisely. So for anyone out there who's ever looked at the status quo, at the systems of power, and thought, is this it? Is there another way?
This introduction sounds like a really compelling place to start exploring those questions.
Yeah, it challenges assumptions, about power, about what humans are capable of when it comes to governing themselves.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. As you go about your day, maybe walking through that city again, just imagine what would need to fundamentally change. What would look different in just the everyday interactions, the way things are organized? If that city truly ran on principles of freedom and voluntary cooperation.
It's a big question.
It is. But hopefully, thinking about it connects back to some of the ideas we've touched on today, and maybe, just maybe, it gets you thinking even more.